Hi. So for my article assignment, I was given the article Addressing North American Air Traffic Controller Shortcomings. It was published July 19th of 2023, and it was originally published on the International Air Transport Association page. So what this article is it's about a Geneva conference where the director of the Air Transport Association, or Willie Walsh, that was his name, is discussing how there's been an issue with not having enough air traffic controllers, and because we don't have enough, we're seeing issues with operations not being done successfully or not being fulfilled, and so we're having issues there, which we'll get into. He does specifically talk about the United States and Canada, but we'll get into those individually here in a minute. He starts the whole conversation off by bringing up COVID. He talks about how after COVID, there was this increase in demand for aviation. People are wanting to fly more, travel, go see things. But with this increase in demand, we weren't able to keep up with hiring coworkers. They didn't have enough coworkers to handle the demand, and so that was a bit of an issue. But to get more into it specifically, in the United States, he starts by bringing up the Department of Transportation. There was apparently a report written that pretty much states that the FAA isn't doing anything about the numbers that are shrinking for airline workers. They're kind of putting the blame on the FAA and being like, they're not doing anything about it. It's kind of their fault. They need to do something about it. They need to stand up or give people compensation or do something. But it specifically talks about how if you look at the statistics, 77% of the vital facilities used for air traffic controllers are staffed below the agency's 85% threshold, which is not a great thing. He gets more specific into it and talks about the New York Terminal Radar Approach Control and Miami Tower. Wow. But he talks about how the numbers for those two are actually really significantly low. One was at 55% or 54%, and then the other one was at 66%. And that's kind of a pretty significant issue if that's all that you have staffed at these places compared to what they're looking for. He goes more into New York and talks about how in 2023, the airlines that were flying into New York actually had to reduce their scheduling by 10%, somewhere more than 10%, but they were kind of between like 10 and 20%, due to the fact that they literally did not have enough coworkers to accommodate the operations that they needed to get done for people to actually fly into this airport and then fly out, which is obviously an issue. Due to the increase in workers doing the air traffic control like jobs and stuff, administration kind of started talking about like, what are we gonna do about this? You know, we can't just have people missing planes or being delayed or getting booted because we can't get coworkers. So they decided to come up with a plan, which pretty much was the compensation. So like, if your plane is delayed, or if you miss a flight because of something that's our fault, or if you are booted from a flight, then they were like, well, let's come up with a way to fix this. So they ended up coming up with some sort of compensation for passengers who were dealing with that situation, which is a good start. In the section about Canada, it's more about, there's not enough air traffic controllers. We're having issues with operation. It's literally the exact same thing. But it talks a little bit about how in the past year they've canceled hundreds of flights due to the fact that they don't have people at airports to handle stuff. And that's a big issue. But the FAA is not the one handling the situation in Canada. It's actually the Canadian government that is currently revising the rights of passengers and making sure that they receive some sort of compensation. It seems like they're still really discussing exactly what they're doing, whereas it seems to be a little bit more settled in the United States, which, granted, this article is a year old, so it could be totally different by now. But overall, the bottom line is that these two countries are trying to figure out a way to fix the problem that they are having right now by increasing their air traffic controllers and staff so that passengers are not being delayed and affected by the shortage of people. And then if they are, they're coming up with compensation. So thank you.